As Gregorian chant became the basis for your Catholic Church service, there had to be a way to teach the proper method of the chant to people of all different countries and languages. Not that the language really mattered, because you were singing the chants in Latin anyway, but they had to be taught to all the different Catholic churches across the world. So how are we going to do this? Well, they came up with a way to write music, to notate it. At first this was done by the monks or the nuns, sometimes the actual, what's the guy called? The cantor, anyone who was involved in the Catholic Church could be one of the people writing it. And he did it with very fancy calligraphy. And this method of writing had to specify what notes you were supposed to sing, a basic idea of the rhythm, not that the rhythm was firmly notated in Gregorian chant. It was still kind of loose and there was no set pulse. But they had to notate whether you were supposed to move rather quickly or slowly. And that was the first thing that was all had to be done. Once that was done, you found that the composers started to be a little more interested in writing multiple notes. And at that point, you had polyphonic music start to happen. And you had to notate a relationship between parts. Our first two major polyphonic composers came out of, I believe it was northern France. Northern France was where polyphonic notation started to really develop, and your two main cats were Léonin and Perrotin. Alright, we've established that Gregorian chant was very much the set Catholic liturgy. Can you imagine going every single week to church and hearing the exact same monophonic chant? It had to get pretty boring. So to keep the people in the church happy, polyphonic music started to become more and more popular. But what this early polyphonic music was really just taking the original chant, which is usually kept in the tenor voice. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but that voice was often called the cantus firmus. That simply meant it was what the rest of the song was being built around, and it was your primary chant. But you might take and put melodies above it, melodies below it, and change the rhythms of the different melodies so that there were all kinds of different motions going on. And in doing this, you created a sense of chord structure and chord motion. This is the kind of thing that led to the Baroque period, which is going to come next. That's where you start getting counterpoint and all kinds of things. We'll talk about them. I can sit here and try and explain all this to you, and I think I'll just make you go, huh? What's he talking about? So after hearing that first chant, now I'm going to put another chant on, but this one is a polyphonic chant. And here we go. think you can imagine if you had to go to the church where they were singing that, or the earlier one where they just did it straight monophonic, you would probably find yourself being more interested in going to the church that was using the polyphonic approach. This became something of a contest, not so much a spoken out contest, but it was something of a contest and a recruiting element among the Catholic churches to try to have the best choirs and best polyphonic music represented so that they could be the most entertaining. Because again, the church was pretty much the only entertainment. It was pretty much your life. And one other thing here, this isn't really in the book, but something I feel is kind of, well, not so much important, just an interesting fact. You heard the high voices in what we just listened to. Well, that's from a boys' choir. But as the boys were growing up, you were given a choice at that time. You could either stay in the church, and if you had a lovely voice, oh, we'd love to keep you singing, or you can go to war and get killed. So take your pick. Well, a lot of those lovely high-voiced boys decided to have their manhood removed, so to speak, and when you were castrated, you became a castrata, and you kept that lovely voice into your manhood, which is, well, again, that's why they were called castratas, and that was your choice. If you had a lovely voice, you could, well, become a castrata, or you could lose your voice and go into war later on. So when you hear the term castrata, that is what it is referring to, a castrated male singer who had a lovely high voice that they were trying to keep into manhood. Alright, beyond that, I think we've covered most of the things you had to know about polyphonic music by comparison. And if not, you can always go back and play this one and play the monophonic one again and listen to the difference.